While I stood over my baby's tiny white casket, my parents were 3 miles away at my brother's engagement pool party, posing for photos, holding champagne flutes, smiling like nothing had happened. My daughter Lily was 6 months old. She had died 2 days earlier. And my mother said to me, "It's just a baby, Isabel. Nathan's party matters more." Before I share everything, because this story, it will shake something in you, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever felt invisible to the people who should have loved you most, hit that like button and subscribe. You're going to want to hear how this ends. My name is Isabel Hart. I'm 29. I'm a pediatric nurse. For years, I thought of myself as the steady one, the overachiever, the reliable daughter, the emotional medic in a family that only seemed to bleed for my brother. Nathan was the golden boy, 3 years older, star of every dinner table conversation. He could bring home a B- and they'd throw a barbecue. I got straight A's and heard, "That's what we expect of you, sweetie." He crashed his first car at 17, they bought him another one. I worked double shifts to pay off my nursing degree and got, "Well, you're more responsible than Nathan." It wasn't just favoritism. It was systemic neglect disguised as politeness. I was the emotional dumpster, the one they called when someone was sick, when a dog needed to be put down, when a casserole had to be made for a neighbor's funeral. But I was never celebrated, never centered. My name didn't get etched in trophies or wedding toasts. It got brushed aside. Still, I kept trying. I thought maybe if I played by the rules, showed up for everything, sent thank you cards, invited them into my life, they'd finally see me. Especially when Lily came. Lily, my whole heart. She was born in the middle of a January snowstorm, soft wisps of dark hair, ocean blue eyes like mine. I remember holding her for the first time and thinking, This is what love should have always felt like. My husband Mark and I were exhausted, overwhelmed, and completely enchanted. His parents visited the hospital that same night with balloons and homemade soup. Mine came the next day, 45 minutes. My mother left early for a hair appointment. My father forgot Lily's name once in front of a nurse. Still, I sent them photos. Lily's first smile, her giggles, her first rollover. Silence, or the occasional thumbs-up emoji. Meanwhile, Nathan was traveling Europe with his fiancée, Emily, and my parents followed his Instagram like it was scripture. 2 months before Lily died, we invited my parents to her baby dedication at church. My mother looked at the date and said, "Oh, that's the same weekend as Nathan's engagement party. We'll have to miss the baby thing." And she said it like rescheduling a dentist appointment, like the life of their only grandchild was a trivial inconvenience. I swallowed my hurt. I always did. And then, one ordinary Tuesday night, Lily fell asleep in her crib. The yellow room with hand-painted stencils. Her favorite stuffed bunny by her side. She'd had a slight cold, but nothing serious. I checked her twice before I went to bed. I always checked. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No babbling, no soft fussing, just quiet. I walked into her nursery and found her still. Too still. I touched her cheek and it was cold. From there, everything fractured. My scream. Mark rushing in, CPR on the floor, the paramedics, the ambulance, the doctor with soft eyes saying, "I'm so sorry." It was SIDS. I don't remember how long I sat in that hospital room holding Lily's little body. But I remember the cold. The kind that sinks through your skin and lives in your bones. At some point, I picked up the phone and called my mother. My voice cracked. "Mom, Lily died last night." There was a pause. And then, "Oh, Isabel, that's terrible. Flat. No urgency, no questions. No, we're coming. Just information processed." "I need you here," I said. "The funeral will be Friday." Another pause. "Oh, Friday is Nathan's party. The venue's been paid for. Everyone's already invited." My hand shook. "You're telling me you're going to the party instead of the funeral?" She sighed. "Isabel, be rational. It's just a baby. You can always have another. Nathan's engagement is once in a lifetime. This party matters for his future." I hung up without saying another word. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Not loud, not explosive. More like the quiet snap of a rope that had held too much weight for too long. They chose a party, and I stood at Lily's funeral with Mark and his family, while mine drank champagne and posed for photos under string lights. But this isn't just a story about grief. It's about truth. About what happens when you finally stop begging to be seen and start making them look. The morning after Lily's funeral, I sat in her nursery and stared at the rocking chair. The walls still smelled like baby lotion and sleep. I remember thinking, don't touch anything. If I keep it all the same, maybe the universe will rewind. Mark's parents came by daily. They brought food we didn't eat, folded laundry we didn't wear. They didn't talk much, just sat with us, present, steady. My parents' silence. Not a call, not a text. Not even a goddamn forwarded sympathy card. I sent one last message. Just 3 words, you weren't there. They didn't reply. A week passed. Then a thick ivory envelope arrived, with gold calligraphy so ornate I almost laughed. An invitation. Nathan and Emily's engagement celebration. An evening of love, laughter, and legacy. Legacy. That word made my hands shake. I didn't RSVP. I didn't write back. But 2 nights later, my phone rang. First my mother, then my father, then Nathan. When I didn't answer, they tried Mark. He passed me the phone with a look that said, "You don't have to, but I know you will." I answered Nathan's call. "Hey, I heard you're not coming to the engagement party," he said like I'd declined brunch plans. "I'm not." A beat of silence. "Isabel, Mom and Dad are really upset. Are they?" I could hear my voice fraying. Were they upset when they missed their granddaughter's funeral? "That's not fair," he said sharp now. "They made plans. They couldn't cancel. It's not like they didn't care. They didn't show up, Nathan. You act like Lily was he stopped, but not soon enough. Like she was what my voice was ice. She was just... she was a baby. You didn't even really know her yet." I said nothing. I just ended the call. After that, I stopped waiting for them to act like the people I needed, or deserved. I started remembering with clarity. The favors I'd done. The birthdays they forgot. The time I was in the ER for dehydration after a flu. And no one showed up, but they flew across the country when Nathan had a sinus infection and missed a flight. This wasn't new. Lily's funeral wasn't the beginning. It was the final confirmation. And then, a message. From my Aunt Claudia, a simple one-liner sent late at night, "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry about your parents missing the funeral. I thought your dad's back was why they stayed home." I blinked. "Wait what I typed back." She responded instantly. "Your mother said he couldn't move. Sciatic nerve. Said they were devastated but couldn't travel." I sat there staring at the screen. They hadn't just skipped the funeral. They lied. They fabricated an injury. Told people my father was bedridden. While there were photos on Nathan's Instagram, no less, of my dad playing lawn games and holding court by the grill. The betrayal had layers. This wasn't passive. This wasn't absence. This was erasure. I opened Instagram, scrolled. There it was. A photo posted the same morning Lily was buried. My mother in a coral dress holding a mimosa, laughing. Caption, "Cheers to love, to family, to the future of the heart legacy." Legacy. That word again. Like Lily hadn't existed. Like I hadn't carried her, birthed her, held her cold body for 3 hours in a hospital room while a chaplain whispered prayers over her still hands. I sent the photo to myself, then screenshotted the timestamp. 11:16 a.m., Friday. Lily's burial was at 11. Then I checked the comments. Claudia again. "So sorry we couldn't be there. Hope Charles is feeling better soon." I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I closed the app and opened my laptop. If they wanted to pretend nothing happened, I was going to make it impossible. I started building a file, a timeline, not just of the funeral, of everything. Birthdays, events, missed milestones, messages with one-word replies, photos where I was cropped out, proof. Not for them. For me. Because gaslighting only works if you start to believe the lies. I wasn't going to forget. A few days later, I called my cousin Leah. She'd been at the funeral. She hugged me so hard I thought I'd break. "I have a weird question," I asked. "What did my parents tell people about missing the funeral?" A long pause. "Then, they said your dad was in too much pain to move, that your mom had to stay behind and care for him. They said they were devastated." I bit down on my lip until it bled. Leah added quietly, "But honestly, we saw the photos. Everyone did. No one really believed them." I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn their house down. But I didn't. Instead, I made a decision. I was going to confront them, not with tears, not with rage, with truth. But first, I needed more. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the living room with my laptop, a half-drunk cup of coffee, and the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Every few minutes, I'd scroll through photos of Lily, then flick back to the screenshots of my parents smiling at a party while her casket was being lowered into the ground. The contrast was too much. That night, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I logged into my old iCloud, the one I'd used before Mark, and I combined our calendars and contacts. It was a whim, maybe intuition. I wasn't expecting to find anything, and then I did. A shared album I'd been invited to almost a year ago, Heart Family Events. I'd ignored it at the time, probably assumed it was wedding prep or one of Nathan's elaborate birthday parties. But now I opened it. It had 187 photos, dated from before Lily was born, up to the day of her funeral. Baby showers, brunches, holiday gatherings, all without me. My parents had hosted a 4th of July backyard bash 6 months earlier. I had never been told. I had been 8 months pregnant. I had sent them ultrasound photos that week. No reply. But in these pictures, I saw my mother radiant in red, white, and blue, holding a sparkler. I clicked on a photo from September Nathan's surprise promotion dinner at a steakhouse downtown. In the background, my father had his arm around Emily. My mother held up a sign, our legacy, our future. That word again. I sat back on the couch. My hands trembled so badly, I had to set the laptop down. Then it got worse. Buried in my email spam folder, some glitch from a filter I never fixed, was an email string titled Family Party Logistics Engagement Weekend, sent from my mother's Gmail. I opened it. There were 34 emails. In one thread I read, "We need to make sure there's no overlap with the church thing Isabel mentioned." "Yes," my father wrote back. "We already told her we can't come. If she asks again, say it's Nathan's once-in-a-lifetime event." Then later, "What if she makes a scene she won't? She never does. She caves." I read that line over and over. She caves. I saw myself in their words. Predictable, disposable. They hadn't just skipped the funeral. They'd counted on me not calling them out. Counted on me being polite, predictable, quiet. That version of me was gone. 2 days later, I sent a message to my parents. "I want to come by, just to talk, Sunday at 2. My mother replied immediately, "Of course. I'll bake lemon cake. Let's put this behind us." Put it behind us. I printed everything, photos, emails, texts. I made a packet, a timeline. And then I added something else. A letter, one I'd rewritten a dozen times. It wasn't for them, it was for me. I needed it in my own words, unflinching. I needed to read it out loud. Mark offered to come with me, but I said no. This was mine. When I pulled up to their house, it looked exactly as it always had. Symmetrical hedges, lavender in the flower beds. The front door painted the same deep green from my childhood. My mother answered in pearls and lipstick. "Isabel, come in, I made your favorite." I followed her into the same living room where we'd once opened Christmas gifts, where I once showed them my college acceptance letter, where they once told me Nathan was the one carrying the family name. My father was in his usual chair. He stood when I entered. "Good to see you," he said. I sat on the edge of the couch and placed my purse beside me. Inside was Lily's photo, the last one we'd taken, 4 months old. That gummy, perfect smile. "I'd like to talk before we have cake," I said. My parents exchanged that look. The one that said, "She's being difficult again." "All right," my mother said, settling into the love seat with a glass of iced tea. I pulled out the photo first, placed it on the table between us. "This is Lily," I said. "Your granddaughter, the one you didn't bury." My mother's eyes flicked to the picture, then away. My father didn't speak. I pulled out the folder next. "This is a timeline. It includes every message I sent about Lily that got no response, every milestone you ignored, and the party photos, with timestamps." I flipped it open, page by page. "When she was born, you stayed 45 minutes. You left because of a hair appointment." I turned the page. "When she rolled over for the first time, I sent you a video. You didn't reply." Another page. "The day of her funeral, you posted this." I held up the printout. "You toasted Nathan's engagement. At 11:16 a.m., her service started at 11. My mother opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. "I'm not finished." I pulled out the printed emails. This is your conversation about the church event. About me. You counted on me caving. Their faces changed. My father sat back stone still. My mother's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. I pulled out the letter last. I wrote this to say the things I couldn't during Lily's funeral, because I was too broken. But I'm not broken now. And I read, word for word. About the moment I touched Lily's cheek and felt the cold. About the scream that ripped from my throat. About the silence in the nursery. About the horror of burying my child with no grandparents present. About the text that said, "It's just a baby." About what it feels like to be erased. When I finished, I folded the letter and placed it beside the photo. "I'm not here for an apology," I said. "I'm here so you can never say you didn't know." My mother wiped a tear. My father stared down at his hands. "You can always have another child," he said quietly. "That's what we thought. That, it would ease the loss." I almost laughed. I almost screamed. Instead, I said, "You didn't just devalue her life. You invalidated mine." They said nothing. I stood. "I'm going to take a step back from this family. Until and unless you're capable of acknowledging the full truth of what you did." I picked up Lily's photo and the letter. "I won't be invisible again. Not for your comfort." As I walked out, my mother called after me, "Isabel, please. Don't go like this." I turned at the door. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "You're the ones who weren't there when it mattered." The night before I returned to their house, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't shake. I planned, not from spite, not to punish, but because truth deserves structure, and grief when buried rots. I wouldn't rot with it. I cleared the kitchen table and laid everything out the funeral program with Lily's name in embossed gold, the screenshots with timestamps, the printed emails they thought I'd never see. Then I found something else, something small. Lily's hospital wristband, her name still legible in the smudged ink. I wrapped it in tissue paper. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I needed her there. The next morning, I dressed in navy, the color of her dedication dress. A silent message. When I pulled up to the house, I saw both their cars in the driveway. Curtains drawn. No decorations this time. No cake. I rang the doorbell and waited. My mother answered, makeup-free hair pulled back. My father stood behind her stiff. There were deep bags under his eyes. We sat at the dining room table, the same one where they'd hosted brunches. Just the three of us now. No Mark, no distractions. I want to be clear, I began this isn't about closure. This is about clarity. My mother nodded mutely. My father's jaw worked. Before I say anything, I continued. I need your agreement. No excuses. No minimizing. If I speak, you listen. They nodded. I pulled out the timeline and set it in front of them again, this time with a handwritten note that read, "A history of your silence." Then, I pulled out a sealed envelope, my copy of the funeral guest list, with handwritten notes from everyone who asked where they were. "I kept this," I said, tapping it once, "because every time someone asked, I didn't know what to say. But you did. You lied. You told them Dad's back was out." I didn't think my mother started. "No," I cut in. "You didn't feel..." "That's the problem." I placed Lily's hospital band on the table. The room fell silent. "This," I said, "is all I have left of her. And you skipped her funeral. You lied about it. And then you smiled in photos while we buried her." Tears filled my mother's eyes, but I held steady. "You didn't just fail me as parents. You failed Lily. You made her death about your comfort. You took what little we had left, dignity, memory, grief, and made it secondary to Nathan's photo op. We didn't know how to handle it," my father said, his voice hoarse. "Grief is hard. So you chose a party," I said flatly. "That was easier." Neither argued. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out the printed email chain, the one where they'd planned to avoid the funeral entirely. I read the lines aloud. "We already told her we can't come. She won't make a scene. She caves." I looked up. "I'm not caving anymore." They said nothing. "You were supposed to love me," I said quietly. "Not conditionally. Not when it was convenient. Always. And you didn't. Not when it counted." I could see it in my mother's face, something crumbling. In my father's shame, real this time. I stood up. "I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here to tell you this. The next time you talk about family legacy, remember, you abandoned your granddaughters." I turned to leave, but then my father, voice shaking, said, "We've lost sleep since that day. Your letter, it was brutal, but we read it again and again. My mother added, barely audible, "I didn't really look at her. I didn't realize she had your eyes." I froze. "I'm not here to soothe your guilt," I said, turning around. "But I needed to know if you even saw her." My father nodded slowly. "We do now. Too late, I know. But we do." I let the silence linger. Let them sit with it. "I'm stepping away," I said. "Not forever, but for now. Until you decide to show up fully. Honestly. Without lies or excuses." They nodded again. I took the hospital band, tucked it back into my purse, and said, "My daughter was not disposable, and neither am I." The days after that confrontation felt like stepping off a spinning carousel, dizzying, disorienting, but strangely still. I didn't feel triumphant, not at first. I felt emptied, like I'd poured years of pain, silence, and grief into that dining room, and left it there, still sticky on the floor, clinging to their skin. It wasn't closure. It was exposure. The dam had broken, and now I was standing in the flood, waiting to see what would remain. But underneath that hollowness was something else. A quiet clarity, a subtle sense that something had shifted, not just in them, but in me. Like I'd stopped carrying a weight I never agreed to lift in the first place. I could finally begin grieving my daughter, without grieving my own erasure at the same time. Mark noticed it first. "You're sleeping deeper," he said one morning. "You're not curling up as tight." I hadn't realized I'd been sleeping like I was bracing for impact, as if I expected grief to reach out and hit me again at any moment. I started therapy again. Not just for the loss of Lily, though that grief still clung to me like a second skin, but for something older, deeper, for the version of myself I'd buried trying to earn love from people who treated it like a scarce resource. Dr. Nina, my therapist, didn't ask many questions at first. She watched me, quietly, kindly, like she was letting me walk into my own understanding. "They didn't fail to love you," she said during our third session. "They failed to see you. And that's the more dangerous betrayal, because it makes you question if you were ever real in their eyes." That line cracked something open in me, because that's exactly how it had felt. Like I was a projection in their world, a useful daughter, not a human one. A tool, an accessory to the golden child's legacy. Mark's parents remained our anchor. They visited twice a week. They never came empty-handed: fruit soup, clean laundry. They'd sit in the memorial garden we built for Lily, sometimes in silence, sometimes telling stories. One evening, Mark and I sat in the garden soil, still under our fingernails, planting pink hyacinths around the angel statue we'd placed at the center. Wind chimes clinked above us gently. "She would have had your stubbornness," Mark said suddenly, his voice cracking just a bit. I smiled. "She'd have run this house, probably our lives." We both laughed, and for the first time in months, it didn't feel like betrayal to feel joy again. That night a letter came. A real one. Handwritten, from my father. "Isabel, we've read your letter many times. We've had to sit with it. With the discomfort. The truth. I understand now that what I saw as your strength was never permission for us to ignore your needs. You've been our compass, and we failed to follow it. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I hope for the chance to see you clearly for the first time, and to honor Lily, the way we should have from the start." I read it twice, then a third time. It didn't fix anything, but it didn't deflect. It didn't defend. It simply acknowledged. And that mattered. A week later, my mother called. Her voice was different, measured, unsure. "I made something for Lily," she said. When she arrived, she handed me a small box. Inside was a glass ornament, engraved with Lily's name, her birth date, and a pair of delicate angel wings. It was soft pink, my daughter's favorite color. "I should have been there," my mother whispered. "I will regret that for the rest of my life." I didn't offer her comfort. I didn't say I forgive you, but I did say thank you. It was a start. We began meeting once a month. Just the three of us. I set boundaries: no redirecting, no pretending, no erasing Lily's name from the conversation. When they slipped, I corrected them. When they listened, I noticed. Nathan stayed silent through it all. But one rainy April afternoon, there was a knock at the door. He stood on our porch, soaked through, holding a potted rose bush with trembling hands. "For Lily," he said. "We planted it together in silence." "She deserved better," he finally said, pressing soil down around the roots. "And so did you. I thought you were being dramatic. I didn't want to deal with it." "But you were right." I didn't absolve him, but I let the rain wash over both of us. At work, I returned to the pediatric floor part-time. Slowly, I treaded carefully around the rooms that once echoed Lily's laughter. I didn't know if I could still do it, hold other people's babies when mine was gone. Then one day, a mother in room 204 broke. Her infant had died the week before. Congenital heart defect. She sobbed into her hands and told me people were already telling her, "You're young. You'll have another." I sat down next to her, took her hand in mine. "My daughter died last year," I said softly. They told me the same thing. It shattered me. She looked up startled. Her face crumpled. And then she collapsed into me, sobbing into my scrubs. That's when I realized I wasn't just surviving. I was becoming someone else. Someone who had walked through hell and come out honest. Blunt, grief-worn, but whole. I started volunteering with an infant loss support group. I listened to stories. I shared mine. I helped mothers write letters to babies they'd never hold again. And I wrote to Lily. Every Friday, "Dear Lily, the garden is blooming. Your dad swears one of the butterflies that landed on your statue was you. I think maybe he's right. I hope you visit often. Love, Mom." It wasn't a party. It was a remembrance. But it felt like joy. It felt like peace. We called it Lily's Garden Day. 1 year after we buried her, we opened our backyard to everyone who had shown up, not just in those final months, but in the darkest days. Friends, neighbors, nurses, Mark's parents, even Dr. Nina. And yes, my parents came. Nathan too. The garden was glowing. Mark had strung fairy lights through the trees. The rose bush Nathan brought stood tall, now crowned in coral blooms. Pink hyacinths lined the path. Wind chimes danced in the breeze. We set up a photo wall prints of Lily's short, beautiful life, and beside it, a guest book. Not just to sign, but to write messages to her. At the entrance was a hand-painted sign, "Love doesn't disappear. It grows roots." I watched as my father walked the garden, slowly stopping in front of every plant like it was sacred. He wore a soft gray blazer. In his hands was a single letter folded carefully. When he reached the statue, he knelt, placed the letter in the tray we'd built beneath it, and whispered something I couldn't hear. His shoulders shook once. My mother brought Lily a stuffed lamb. She liked the one in the nursery, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This one's softer." She didn't ask to hold me. She didn't push. But when I offered my hand, she held it tight. Inside the dining room was warm with food and laughter. Someone had made Lily's favorite lemon cookies. Mark was deep in conversation with one of the support group dads. His parents had brought a photo album from Mark's childhood. Something about seeing baby Mark with wide blue eyes made the whole room erupt in gentle laughter. Then someone tapped a spoon to a glass. It was my father. He stood beside the garden doors, his eyes glassy. "I know this isn't a traditional speech," he began. But then again, nothing about this past year has been traditional or easy. He looked at me. "Isabel, my daughter, you've been the anchor. Even when we didn't see it. Even when we failed you. You held more than anyone should ever have to hold. And when we turned away, you didn't crumble. You stood. You made this." He gestured to the garden. "You made space for all of us to face the truth and grow." The room was silent. Then soft clinks of glasses. A quiet cheer. Someone whispered, "It's about time." I didn't cry. Not then. But I stood up, took a deep breath. And I said, "Thank you, Dad. And thank you all for showing up, for staying when it got uncomfortable, for seeing her really seeing Lily, and for finally seeing me." That night, after everyone left, I sat on the porch swing beside Nathan. "You were always the loud one," he said, sipping tea. "But you were also the brave one." "I wasn't. I let them write you off because it was easier." I nodded. "I used to think if I could just do everything right, they'd finally love me the way I needed." "You did everything right," he said. "They just weren't ready to see it." He paused. "I'm sorry it took Lily dying for us to wake up." The wind shifted. A chime rang. Somewhere inside me, the ache softened. "You still working on the startup?" I asked, changing the subject gently. "Yeah," he smiled faintly. "But I'm building slower now, more intentionally. I want to build something Lily would be proud of." I squeezed his hand. "Then build it with heart." A few weeks later, my mother asked if we could cook together. We made pasta from scratch. I showed her how to roll the dough thin like my grandmother did. She told me she used to watch me from the doorway when I was 10, folding tea towels like hospital linens. I didn't know how to reach you, she said, kneading dough. You were always so capable, so intense. I was scared I'd break you. You didn't have to reach me, I whispered. You just had to stay. We didn't say much after that. But when she hugged me goodbye that night, it wasn't stiff. It was warm, real. Work changed too. I returned full-time but with boundaries. I no longer absorbed everyone's pain like a sponge. I let it pass through me like a river. I let myself say no. I started a mentorship group for younger nurses navigating grief. And one morning, a girl named Dana brought in a butterfly clip with pink rhinestones. For you, she said, like the ones your daughter liked. That clip sits on my locker door now, next to a picture of Lily. And a post-it that says, "You are not too much. They were never ready." That's my new mantra. Not everyone will understand the fire inside you. Not everyone will cherish the weight you carry. But that doesn't mean it isn't sacred, or valuable, or worthy of celebration. I built a life around people who see me, and even those who once didn't. Some of them are learning. Because I demanded it. Because I stopped shrinking. Because Lily reminded me that love doesn't cower. It doesn't lie. And it damn sure doesn't abandon you when you're hurting most. Love stays, love fights. And so do I. If this story struck something in you, if you've ever felt abandoned, unseen, or underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, leave a comment. Share your story. Let this be your line in the sand. And if you're still healing, still building your voice, know this. You are not too much. You were never too much. You are enough. And your truth deserves to be heard. Hit that like button, subscribe for more real stories like this, and please send this to someone who needs it, because we rise louder, stronger, and freer together.